We are moving into a new season of joy and hope. Whatever this season that we haven't named yet that's behind us is going to be called, we just know it's weird and we're ready to move past it. I'm ready to move past moments like Monday. I was helping my 5-year-old put his mask on before school. And I said, hey buddy, did you know that before a year ago, mommy never owned a mask? I'd never even worn a mask. And he was like, wait, what? His childhood is being so shaped by hybrid schools and masks and social distancing. It's unfathomable to him. Larry and I were processing all the negative effects that this season could be. And then we began to wonder, what if the end result of all of this isn't disaster? Could there be an end to this era that doesn't involve every single person in counseling and social distancing forever? Do we have an imagination for what this world could be if there's a good and beautiful ending to this unnamed weird era? Well, I hope you're willing to give me a cynical, like, sure, yeah, or a prove it, because the ending of the story of Easter brought radical change to what seemed like inevitable doom and gloom. And I believe, I'm hopeful that the story of Easter could rewrite our imagination for the endings even to our own stories. I'm Megan, and I'm the pastor here at Chapel Hill, Port Orchard, and I'm sharing with you the message of Easter, our first time that we were able to be together on Easter morning, Sunday morning in Port Orchard. And I want to invite you into an imagination for a hopeful and joyful season ahead that's shaped by our belief and our hope in what Jesus did so long ago. Jesus' friends were the company you want to keep if you have a hard time believing that something good and beautiful can come out of hard things. His friends had this experience on Easter morning where they expected the worst and experienced something very different in exchange. I'm going to unpack this story for you from Luke chapter 24, and I want to invite you just to hear the first verse. We believe that this Bible is God's true word for us, and it's trustworthy for life. Hear Luke 24, verse 1. On the first day of the week, at early dawn, they, a group of women, went to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. Jesus had a group of friends who were women who'd been with him when he died on Friday night. They were there when his body was taken down and wrapped in linen and put in a tomb. There wasn't time to clean his body and to embalm it. So they went home and they bought oils and spices to go in a couple days to do that hard work. They were like good essential oil people. They put together likely olive oil with frankincense and myrrh, and their hands smelled like what they knew death to smell like. But they went into their day of rest Saturday like they always would without working. They didn't sleep well Saturday night. They got up without alarms before the break of dawn and went to the last place that they'd find Jesus, to find him again, taking those oils for anointing his body, expecting the worst, but ready to get at that hard work. How many of you have ever approached God that way? Have you ever gotten up and gone like, okay, I got to figure out this God stuff, but I'm pretty sure it's the worst? Probably not going to have any answers, but let's go anyway. Or have you ever come to church like that? Look, I'm a pastor, but I'm a human being. And there have been Sunday mornings that I've gotten up and gone, okay, kids, let's go to church. Not sure it's going to be awesome, but at least maybe there'll be donuts afterwards. Am I right? But the hope with coming to church, the hope with going to the tomb is that maybe that was the last place you'd seen Jesus, you'd found God, and maybe he would be there again. Except when the women went back to the tomb, they expected to find Jesus' body there, but his soul gone. They were ready to face their worst fears, their biggest griefs. But then, verse 2, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. What they found was a eucatastrophe. I've got a fancy new big word for you. Larry taught me this word this week. I just realized I'm not sure if this is going to read straight or not. We'll fix this for you. This crazy word, eucatastrophe, is a made-up word. It was made up by J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And you can see there the word catastrophe. We know what that word is, the awful moment that changes every moment after that. But then it also has this construction with you, which in Greek means good. It's a good catastrophe. What is that? Well, for Tolkien, it was that moment at the end of The Two Towers when all of the good guys are trapped in the keep and the enemy lines have broken in and there's nowhere to go. But then, on the dawn, coming with the sun, is Gandalf with a new army, right? Eucatastrophe, that is that moment. Here's a definition for you. Eucatastrophe is a sudden turn of events at the end of a story, which ensures that the protagonist does not meet some terrible, impending, and very plausible and probable doom. A eucatastrophe is a storyline that no one could have predicted, that makes everything turn out for the good. Jesus' life, Jesus' death was a catastrophe. He was the greatest teacher the world had ever seen. Every major world religion loves the teaching of Jesus. It's radical and new and authoritative. He died at 33 years old. What else could he have written? Jesus was the greatest healer the world had ever seen. If anybody got near him who was sick or hurting, they were instantly healed. Imagine if Jesus had just had one more week on earth. How many more people might he have healed? Jesus was politically a total unicorn. He was able to answer so cleverly every question about money and taxes and the military. What might he have done for people in poverty who were sidelined and marginalized if he'd lived long enough to take on the Roman government? Jesus' death was a catastrophe. But then this moment, when they come to the tomb and they don't find a body, eucatastrophe. A good, unpredictable ending that will change the course of the rest of the story. They couldn't have seen it coming, except maybe they should have. Let's keep reading in Luke 24, verse 4. While they were perplexed about this, behold, two men stood beside them in dazzling apparel. And as they were frightened and bowed their faces to the ground, the men said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified and on the third day rise." Don't you remember? They couldn't have seen that Jesus had risen from the dead, but they should have. Jesus told them ahead of time 3 things that must happen. He said he must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, he must be crucified, and on the third day he must rise. What do we mean he must? He must because we needed a radical change in the storyline. From the beginning, the story of people on earth had not been going well. They'd been moving away from God from the beginning. It was God's intention that human beings would rule with authority in a beautiful way for the good of all creation from the beginning. It was his intention that we would be able to discern good from evil and make good decisions with him. But because human beings chose a selfish way, a way of ruling, a way of discerning without God, that break and that disruption has been causing pain from the beginning. And it happens still today. As we choose to make our own way in our own self-reliance and our own decision-making, the way that we focus in on ourselves inevitably leads us further and further away from God and further from his unadulterated goodness. We see the inevitability of the national debt our kids are inheriting. We see the breakdown of the family, and we barrel on as if that's the only solution. Come on, it's going to be bad, but let's go get it. Carpe diem. Let's start saving for your counseling. We're all going to need it, right? We're all trucking away further and further from God as if it's inevitable. It's a very plausible, what was that definition? A very plausible and probable doom. For a different ending, God must make another way, a new way. He must come at dawn with an unforeseen break in the action and change it. And he did. He must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, because the way of love that will change the world, the way of love that God was intending to rule the world, is a way of sacrifice, not a way of self-service. It's a way of being delivered over, not of forcing one's way. And so God in the flesh delivered himself over in love to the very ones who betrayed him. We just watched Raya here as a church community, and I've just been mesmerized that the last couple of Disney movies like Frozen and Raya have emphasized that the end is loving sacrifice, that the truest form of love is not man meets woman happily ever after. It's laying down one's life for one's friends. He must be delivered over, and he must be crucified. That his death, his crucifixion, was an execution of judgment, of God's judgment over all of the wickedness of humanity. We want justice. Has this year not been a cry out for justice? Someone must pay for both the individual forms of injustice, but also the social constructions of injustice. Where will that payment come from? It came when Jesus, the perfect one, the sinless one, perfect God and perfect man, was crucified in judgment, when the wrath of God was poured out on perfect humanity. He must be crucified. We need justice. And he must rise. Death is the inevitable and unavoidable doom coming for us all, and we needed a way out. This year has brought forward the awfulness of death so much more. My grandma went 5 months without a visitor. She lost her leg this year, not because she's unhealthy, but because no one noticed that a scratch on her shin was rotting. That's unjust. That's death at its worst, and we needed a new ending. We needed someone powerful enough to not only end death, to stop that enemy from having us, but someone who has the creative power to bring new life. And so only the Creator God, who breathed life into us all, could breathe life again after he's dead. He must rise. And so he was delivered into the hands of sinful men. He was crucified, and on the third day, he rose. He must. And so he did. The women had forgotten that that's what Jesus said he had to do, because they wanted another way. We would all avoid the way of suffering and death and injustice. But Jesus took that way head on and made a new way for us. And they remembered that he said he was going to do that. And so now that they have remembered, they become the witnesses. I love this. In Greek, the angelos, the angels, they become the messengers to go back and to remind the men of what they had heard. Verse 8, they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women who told these things to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. I think that this is an important moment to speak about the truthfulness of the Bible, how we can trust that the Bible is true. 2,000 years ago, the witness of the women was not a valid testimony in a court of law. And so Luke, who's recording the gospel of Jesus for us, if he wanted us to believe a myth because he was setting up a new religious order, he would not have put this testimony into the mouths of named women. That would not have won anyone over, and especially not to then record the women had it right and then the men did not believe. Luke records the names of women because this is true. This is how it really happened. And it was that the women believed and the men were not convinced. Except Peter. Peter is the one who thought it might be true. He was just curious enough. I also think Peter had a unique memory. Back in Luke chapter 9, it was Peter who first said, Jesus, you are the Christ, you are the Messiah, the one that the Jews have been waiting for, to be king and priest, to save God's people, God in the flesh for us, to bring in a new kingdom. Peter was the first one to make that proclamation, you are the Christ. And immediately after, it's right there in Luke 9 that Jesus then says, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day rise. And I think Peter, as the one who had first confessed that Jesus is the Christ, now has to wonder, are those words true? I remember when Jesus told me that. I'm going to go check it out for myself. And so he runs to the tomb. Verse 12, but Peter rose and ran to the tomb, stooping in and looking in. He saw the linen cloths by themselves, and he went home marveling at what had happened. I love that Peter doesn't get to see the angels. All he sees are the cloths laying in the tomb where the body was. But he goes home marveling. It doesn't say that he went home believing. He went home wondering, hoping, marveling, could this be true? Peter had all day to sit around and to wonder, to think about the words that Jesus had said, to think about the way that he betrayed him. Jesus didn't appear to him right away. That time of waiting was ordained for Peter. And not only Peter will end this day marveling, but all of the disciples will end this day marveling. That was at dawn, right? That the women and Peter went to the tomb. At dusk, Jesus will come and appear to all the men together. And there, still in the same chapter 24, but verse 41, he says, they still disbelieved for joy and were marveling. Jesus' disciples, when they see him rise from the dead, it's not a moment of unshakable belief. It's a moment of marveling for joy, disbelieving for joy. This is their dawning of joy. This is their eucatastrophic moment. Good catastrophe. When they see Jesus rise from the dead and they get to ask the question, could this be true? Could this be real? They'll have to go through and work that out. They'll eat with him, they'll touch his hands and his feet and work out their faith. But the dawning of joy is in the marvel of could it be true? Peter's moment of eucatastrophe was when he saw the tomb and saw the linen cloths and went home marveling. The women's moment of eucatastrophe was when the angels appear to them and say, don't you remember? What is your moment of eucatastrophe going to be? Might it be this moment when you begin to get to ask the question, could this be true? Could God be real? Could the ending of this really be beautiful and good? It's as if you liked the two towers, you're running out with Aragorn. You're taking on the enemy out the front doors, and you're not sure what you're going to see on the horizon. But then bursting out and being willing to ask the question and coming out into community with it lets you be a first-hand witness to the dawning of joy. when Jesus proves that he is who he says he is. For those of us who follow Jesus, Easter is our moment of eucatastrophe. Easter is our moment where we get to begin to believe that a new ending is possible, when we marvel for joy, disbelieving for joy that a body and a soul can be reunited after death, that God's Spirit can be delivered to us, that God's intention for the world is a new heavens and a new earth, that God's intention for the church, Easter gives a new ending to the church, where we are made new and made perfect and made holy. God's Easter gives a new ending to the planet, where trees create fruit in all 12 seasons. This is the new heavens and the new earth that God is creating. A family, a diverse family from every nation and tribe and tongue, together worshiping the Lamb. Easter harkens the possibility for all of that. Easter is the dawning of joy. We at Chapel Hill Port Orchard, we have an imagination for a joyful and beautiful ending to the story of our lives and the story that God is writing in the world. And that joy, that dawning of joy, that marvel is what motivates us to pray and to work toward different relationships with our neighbors and a better school district and the renovation of our waterfront. We believe that Jesus is rising from the dead issues in the possibility of new endings to all our stories. So if you turn off this video and you disbelieve for joy and are marveling, you are in good company. And you would be in good company to come and to be with us. We're starting Alpha on Sunday morning, April 11th at 11:30. If you're watching this later, no worries. You can jump into Alpha at any point. It's the safest and most fun place to come and ask the questions together. We want to hear what you think about, is there more to life than this? And how did you come to that conclusion? We want to hear, can you trust the Bible? And what has shaped how you ask and answer that question? We want to hear from you. What do you think about the church? And why did Jesus die? We want to ask those questions over brunch. And we want to invite you to come and give Alpha a try with us. We're going to be asking those questions in groups of kids and teens and adults. And as a community going, we want to wonder together. We want to marvel together. Thank you again for joining us for our Easter message. I'm Megan Hackman, the pastor here. If you liked this message, please click like, subscribe, share it with a friend who needs the dawning of joy to break into their own life. We're here every Tuesday night at 6:15, and we're going into a season of joy. We're going to be in the book of Philippians, but especially on April 6th, we're going to break out all different kinds of joy, including puppies, hoping that everyone who leaves that day can reconnect with how they themselves experience joy. And then the Sundays following will have Alpha. So come and join us on a Tuesday night or on a Sunday morning in the spring season. We'd love to have you with us. Bye.